I was teaching in an elementary school, and I saw many children came to school hungry, and many children qualified for free school lunches. And so I said, maybe we can do a program, and I created it. And I said, let's call it the Healthy Snack Program, where we arranged for some funding and we got equipment, an Instant Pot, which is a very safe piece of equipment as long as you don't touch it when it's hot. We get them anything they need, a refrigerator, ingredients, of course, and then they're obliged to at least twice and ideally 3 times or more a week make a healthy snack.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Meryl Fury from Plant Based Nutrition Movement. We are on the Growing a Healthy Child podcast. And today I have the total pleasure of speaking with Dilip Barman, who happens to be a dear, dear friend of mine. One of one of the people I just love, love, love. He's such a great guy. And I am so happy to be able to speak with him and share what he knows with our audience. He has been in the vegan and plant based world for a really, really long time. He is active and visible. He is president of the Triangle Vegetarian Society, and he can tell you a little bit more about what happens there and what his some of his best pursuits in that in the Vegetarian Society. He's also a Food for Life instructor, which is how I got to meet him in the first place. He's also executive producer of the 2020 film Code Blue, which I would love for you to talk a little bit about today also. Now, today, because this is Growing a Healthy Child, we are really focused on children. But the thing about talking about child nutrition is it always leads into the impact that that nutrition has on the individual as an adult. So we'll be getting into that. And that's pretty much where we're going to start. So, welcome, Dilip. So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Meryl, and everything you said. I believe that you're the same. You're a very good friend of mine, and I'm just so honored that you're spending some time with me on this podcast. So thank you, and welcome everybody for joining us.
Yeah, yeah. So, one thing that Dilip is well known for is his work with children. He sends me regular updates on things he's doing with kids. Dilip is a math teacher extraordinaire. I wish I knew him when I was little. He would have had to been much older so I could have learned from him. But he is a math teacher, and he also has a, a a show that comes on Facebook primarily, right, and YouTube called one is the adult version called well it's there's adults in it, not like it's an adult show. But so many cooks in the kitchen, which is several Food for Life instructors that get together and cook along particular themes. And then there's a spin off of that called So Many Kids in the Kitchen, where there's a group of kid cooks that get together on a theme. So, Dilip, tell us a little bit about how you started working with children.
Well, that's a general question. I can go way back. I've always liked children. I used to babysit when I was in eighth grade, maybe, but certainly high school, and I just love the openness and the funness of children. They're so honest, and if they uh, don't like something, they say, "I don't like it." At least you know where you stand. And they're so receptive to education of all kinds. You were focusing on math. I helped to open a math school, and I teach there. I teach math many places, but I also teach children in the Food for Life program, and something called the Healthy Snack Program. So it doesn't have to be math, it can be anything. And I homeschooled my daughter throughout elementary and middle school as well. So I've taught all different ages. I currently am tutoring a 3-year-old in math. That's the youngest. And I tutor a college student and in between. And so but I've taught graduate school. I've taught college classes. I've taught high school classes. I was worked one summer as a preschool teacher, as a substitute preschool teacher. So I've taught many different ages, and have to tell you, at least my successes, uh, I'm bad at many things, but I'm pretty good at teaching. But my best teaching is with kids. And I remember I had a stint at a for-profit college teaching math. It was really math literacy for people who wanted to become cooks or graphic artists or something else, and they just didn't have much math. And like it or not, math is critical in anything we do. It's the problem solving skills. And so I was giving them the basic skills that, I was teaching my daughter in second grade, but these adults didn't
Mm,
have some of that. And that was hard. So adults, I find, who aren't interested are much harder to teach than kids. I find kids are very easy and receptive. In a couple hours, I'll be working with some second and third graders, and they're very enthusiastic, attentive, excited, and 2 hours, right? So 2 hours. A lot of people will say you can't teach second grader for 2 hours. Well, I can, and they enjoy it, and they don't sometimes don't want to go home. So
wow. I find that just amazing. I was terrible at math, terrible. I would freeze up on tests and forget formulas and algebra, and I was pretty good at geometry. Euclidean geometry I could do. I could do the proofs and stuff. But man, so I am in awe. Every time you send me anything from those kids, there's this little piece of me that goes, those kids aren't really doing that. Aren't those kids really doing
Meryl, I would
that?
turn it on its head. I'm in awe of you because you didn't mention this, but when I was in high school, I wanted to be a doctor. You know this story, right?
Mm,
And I majored in applied math, and I took all the pre-med classes, and I got into medical school. I can't memorize. It's the first day of
mm,
medical school. What's the structure of the amino acids? What does meth in histology? What does methylene blue stain? What organelles? And I can't do things like that. And I left medical school. So you're a nurse, so I admire you because you can do things like that. And that's a lot harder than what I do in math. Math is just putting logical steps together. It's just taking one step after the other. It's not that hard. I mean, it requires creative thinking and thinking outside the box sometimes, and having confidence. I'm actually working on a document which I'm hoping will become a book on problem solving strategies. But yeah, but I think the medicine field, and maybe that's why it's interesting that I'm also involved with plant-based nutrition because I am trained as a food for life instructor. I received training, and my background as an undergraduate and the few months I was in medical school taught me a little bit about biochemistry and cell biology, and I have snippets of how it affects human nutrition. But I think as a math person who knows some biology, I'm in awe of people like you who have totally mastered something which I think is more complicated.
wow. Well, I'll tell you what, you have amazing skills where you are. I have my little bag of tricks where I am, and together, we complete two sections of a very large puzzle. So yeah, that's great. That's great. So, like you said, you've been working with children for a long time, and in the world of food, because that's kind of where we focus here. What do you see when you're working with kids in schools? And specifically, I guess where I'm going is, do you ever notice differences in how children eat and how they're able to work, be, focus, attend, sit still in school?
Absolutely. So, and maybe this is an entree to talk about the healthy snack program, which thankfully you're also participating
Mhm.
in. Um, so let me not answer your question initially. Let me give a little introduction to what the healthy snack program is, and then you can bring me back
Great.
and say, "But you haven't answered the question." But politicians are allowed to do that, right?
That's right.
So,
Part of their trade. Go
so
go
I'll
ahead.
take your question now. Can I launch into a quadratic formula discussion, and then you'll come back. You'll say, "That's not what I asked." Yeah, but you want me to teach you about how to do square roots easily? I won't do
I
that.
wish.
Actually, you can calculate square roots by drawing pictures. It's such a cool way to do things. Sometime I'll show you offline. It's really cool.
Yes, do. We'll make a plan for that.
So the healthy snack program relates to I saw that because I was teaching in a elementary school, and I saw we had a number of children who many children came to school hungry, and many children qualified for free school lunches. Um, and so I thought I was teaching I was teaching math. I was also teaching a nutrition class. And so I said, maybe we can do a program. And I created it. And I said, let's call it the Healthy Snack Program, where we arranged for some funding and we got equipment in Instant Pot, which is a very safe piece of equipment as long as you don't touch it when it's hot. And we have the students whose classes we're in. I don't know if you do this with your students. I think recommended it, but they
Mhm.
have to basically sign a contract that I will not touch the Instant Pot at all. It's not just, even if it's cold, they might knock it down or something like that. So that's off limits. It's only the teacher and the teacher's proxies, the teachers, whom they appoint, who are allowed to handle the Instant Pot. So anyhow, we get some money, we get them an Instant Pot, we get them anything they need, a refrigerator, ingredients, of course, and then they're obliged to at least twice, and ideally 3 times or more a week, make a healthy snack. And it could be something like beans and rice. It could be quinoa with vegetables. It can be tofu with vegetables. It can be the school I started this at has a big strawberry festival. So I showed them how to make strawberry jam in the Instant Pot. I'm not trying to promote one brand. It doesn't have to be Instant Pot. It can be any all-in-one cooker. I'll use the word Instant Pot, but substitute whatever your favorite all-in-one cooker is. Um, we Oatmeal is a big hit. And we don't use any sweetener because, as you know, when you add sweetener, it raises your glycemic index, and sometimes makes kids a little bit too hectic, or a little bit too hyper is the word
Mhm.
that's often used.
Mhm.
We make yogurt, vegan yogurt. I've been making vegan yogurt for 15 years or something like that. Uh, Maybe not quite that long, 12 to 15 years. And I show in the schools how to do that. So they sometimes make yogurt with sometimes strawberry jam.
Mhm.
So I have a whole list of dishes that they can make, different grains, um, brown rice, lentils, all sorts of things. Um, and so that's worked great, because the kids love the food. Very rarely do I get somebody who doesn't like the food. And we also try to be not just eating low in the food chain, we try to compost. So, like this school that I started at does have compost. Another school that I started in Nebraska, they didn't. And because of the program, they brought compost in. It was just for this program. I'm not sure why they can't use it in more general, but there's all sorts of school administration rules. Um, and so that's made an impact. The kids have learned a lot, and the teachers say that they're more alert, which doesn't surprise me because they're eating healthy foods. We have organic fruits, bananas, things of that nature. It gives you potassium, energy. So does that not answer your question? And now I can perhaps address exactly what you were asking.
That last part I think did address the question, just like changes that you notice in behavior. I'll tell you, just to add what you were saying. So I have had the pleasure of um, delivering the healthy snack program. I'll say
Thank
it's
you.
such a beautiful program. So we worked with a group of kids here in Wisconsin last school year. Went into one classroom once a month, and I had the honor and thrill of teaching a group of average age 10 years old, fourth and fifth grade kids, about food and nutrition and things like that. And when I wasn't there, the teacher was providing the healthy snack program. So 2 or 3 times a week, a healthy snack, like you said, oatmeal, blueberries. She also did other things, like tried to make sloppy joes, or rice, wild rice and beans. She was willing to try some pretty exotic uh, recipes. When I was there, like I could tell you the first time I walked in, and we had an instant pot full of spiral veggies, spiral pasta, sorry, and red sauce with veggies. The kids were a little bit panicked. They were like, I don't know what that is. I don't eat that. One little boy I will never forget said, I don't eat spices. I can't eat that. It's got green things in it. And of course we don't force the children to eat anything. We just make it available. And really what I tell them, it's just, I want you to just be a little bit brave. Try something you've never tried before. Even if it's just smell it, hold it, squish it, feel it, right? There's all kinds of ways to test. There's all these, textures and things like that. And if you're really, really feeling brave, you can just lick it. And if you don't like it, throw it away. It's not a problem. So the first time we went into the classroom, the children were really, like I said, kind of defended, like, oh, I don't know about that. By about the fifth or sixth time, they were excited to know we were coming that day. What are we having? What is it? And they didn't always like it. Like, okay,
Right.
the chocolate pudding we made out of, I think it was sweet potatoes and chocolate and some dates and stuff. They weren't really thrilled with that, right? We did a eat the rainbow kind of thing, and they didn't love tart cherries. They
Ah.
didn't love certain things. They were like, "Ew, no, we don't like raisins." No, but by the end of the experience, those were different children. They were totally transformed children. So it is a very powerful program. It really is. We have a school that we're working with just starting this year now. We had a meeting with them just yesterday, and they've already started implementing plant-based meals, 2 meals per day, maybe not the snack yet. The snack is yet to come, but they're doing 2 meals a day, at least 3 days a week. And they are already reporting changes in the children's behavior, fewer incidents, fewer outbursts, fewer children getting sent to the office, fewer children complaining of tummy upsets and sneezing and coughing, really making a huge difference. Yeah.
It's a great way to introduce the kids to some really healthy foods. And as you were saying, when I invited you to join the program, we don't push anything on the families. And this is one venue because, like you, I teach kids Food for Life program as well. Is uh, With adults, I can say that yeah, you really want to cut down on your meat and dairy consumption. And here's the reason. But with kids, I defer to their parents. I say
Right.
that I don't. The only people who know what you really need to eat are your parents, but I tell them their parents can talk with me and get suggestions from me. But I don't tell kids, you shouldn't eat meat. But I
Hmm.
say that it's a plant-based program, and the more plants you eat, the better. But talk to your parents about what really is the best diet for you.
Yeah.
So we need to be a little careful because we don't want to. Um, we want to keep our welcome mat open
That's
and
right. We don't want to alienate anyone. That's for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
keep sharing. And a number of kids. Uh, uh, and my program here is on hiatus because of the pandemic. And since the pandemic, they still haven't made a decision about. They're still trying to keep food
Mm,
minimal in the classroom. So
mm.
I'm hoping it comes back. But I've become more busy, so it's okay if we take a little bit longer.
Right.
But
Right.
at some point, I'd like to get our program resuscitated.
Yeah,
I
for
was working
sure.
with a number of classes. And an extension of that, what I was doing with the middle school for about a year was we had a breakfast program. I didn't have enough bandwidth to go into and as you were suggesting, the healthy snack program also includes a visit, in your case by you, in my case by me. Periodically, I'd go in a couple times a month, and I'd be welcome at all these classrooms, and we would explore citrus. Or I brought kohlrabi one time, which looks like a spaceship, and people would pass it around just to show them and normalize that, because a lot of people don't get commonly fresh fruits and vegetables.
That's
Some of
right.
my kids actually their parents shop at gas stations for their food. And so we have to be aware of their food sources and food deserts and food inequities. We have to make sure we're not being patronizing or elitist. But on the other hand, you have to be careful, and you still need to say these things and say, yeah, there's benefits from eating tofu, and it's not elitist in the sense that um, tofu is reasonably affordable and it's
Mhm.
reasonably widely available. If I insisted on fleur de sel and just right kind of
Right.
spices, that kind of wouldn't be the way I would play it with children. I might, since I'm a foodie, as are you, I do those things with my adults. I'll say, this is a cool ingredient. You don't have to use it, but if you do, it adds some extra flavor.
Right.
So I tend not to do those kinds of things with kids.
Yeah. So back to the adults when you're talking to them. I have wondered so many times, why do you think adults think kids won't eat vegetables?
They make assumptions and they say it's their own preconceptions. I know you and I are contemporaries. We're about the same age, and my mom was a great cook, but she wasn't up on nutrition. And I don't think she was unique. I think people our parents' age, when we were growing up, maybe they had home ec, but if so, it was more about food preparation techniques. There wasn't a lot, and even today, Meryl, I mean, there's so much misinformation about nutrition. Thank heavens you and I are associated with really credible organizations like Physicians Committee, which is very strongly evidence based. Michael Greger's Nutrition Facts is a great source. There's so many good authors in this space. There's a lot of great information that plant-based eating is the best way to go, being vegan. Never mind all the ethical and environmental concerns, just talking about what we eat. But that information isn't so much out there, and people have information like you got to drink your cow's milk. Well, have you looked at the research? And the more cow's milk you drink, the more brittle your bones are. Why is that? We have
Mm,
a couple theories, and we can talk about them if you want. But people aren't evidence-based, and people are doing exactly the wrong things for their bones and for the animals and for the environment. So
yeah,
I think adults think kids can't do it because they can't do it. They weren't brought up that way. They were given excuses. You don't have to have your spinach. You don't have to eat broccoli. You can eat potato chips and things like that. So, and the other thing is you can eat in an unhealthy fashion. I have a friend who's the most unhealthy eater, and he brags about his grandfather
mm.
eats ice cream every single day, I believe. I might be misremembering the details. It's been a while since we've talked
Well,
about
I'm
it, but
sure there are some grandpas that do that, even if it's not that grandpa.
right. And there are people who have very unhealthy eating patterns and they live, it seems like in a healthy way and live to a ripe old age. So it's possible, but you're stacking the deck against yourself. And there's just so much disease and infirmity in our country. And one of the main reasons is how we eat.
Yeah.
And so people have those patterns and they say, well, I eat this way and I pick up. I'll tell you a quick story. So when my daughter was when she was maybe in third grade, we went in homeschool on a field trip to Colonial Williamsburg, and we had tickets for different events. I may have told you the story, Meryl,
Well,
privately.
go ahead, repeat.
So we had, and I'm making the numbers up. I don't remember. We had 20 minutes or some small amount of time between two tours or something like that, and we were hungry, and the lines for lunch were long. So we went into kind of a self-serve where they had sandwiches and chips and things like that, grab and go, and they didn't have a lot of vegan choices, and we were hungry. So I said to my daughter, I said, "Let's get this bag of potato chips, and at least it will keep the hunger away, and then we can sit down and have a proper meal." She had never had, I think, potato chips in her life until this point. We don't buy things like that. And she had a couple. I think I bought a bag for her, small bag for her, small bag for me, or maybe I just bought one bag. She had one or two chips. She said, "Daddy, this isn't very good." I'm surprised because I like potato chips, and I eat the chips and I like them. I do like potato chips,
Right.
and that tided me over. And I guess the two or three she had tided her over as well. But there are a lot of people who eat like that all the time. Um, so that's an example of a food that most people love. I love potato chips. I love French fries, and I just don't buy it. Yesterday, I was at a teacher's event, and they had dinner was included. They had some vegan pizza. Um, I didn't like the vegan pizza for whatever reason. I had a small slice, and then I had salad, and then they had bags of potato chips. So I didn't eat it there. I took because you were allowed to take them home, so I grabbed it because I just don't buy it. So when I came home, I did have a small bag of fish, and I liked it. Is it a healthy food? Of course not. If I eat potato chips 5 times a year, does it have any impact? Probably not.
Right.
And if I
Right.
buy these
Right.
big bags, I'll be eating it. So that's an example of how adults have these bad eating habits and assume the kids will have the same habits. The thing that adults sometimes don't realize is that kids have a lot more plasticity. They can change. They're able to try other things. Adults sometimes sometimes believe that kids will eat what they were eaten and that they wouldn't try something that is quote unquote healthy. And there's also this kind of dumbing down. If you watch, kids shows and the commercials, they have all these highly sugared cereals. uh, my daughter now, when she tries things like, here's another example, is I don't do it anymore. I don't want to get into all the details why, but in the old days, I used to buy Coke for my toilets. Coke is a fabulous cleaner for toilets. The reason I don't do it now is I have Toto toilets, and Toto toilets, I guess you could do it, but they just stay clean, much easier.
Okay.
But in the old days, I would buy, and I would be embarrassed. I'd go through the checkout and I'd have like these 8 bottles, two or three per toilet bowl of Coke, and I felt really embarrassed. And I would always tell the checkout person, "It's not for me, I promise. It's for my toilet." So once I came home with all this Coke, and I asked my daughter if she liked to try some, and she took a sip and she said it's not very good. Subsequently, as she's getting older, she's in high school. I remember we were at a event last weekend for math, and there was nothing to drink. All the volunteers had access to the snack room, so she got a can of some sort of soda. And I said, "I'm surprised you got that." She said, "Well, they didn't have water, and I'll drink it." So it's a matter of what you're used to, and if kids are being served these highly sugared drinks, and then you give them fruit, apple or watermelon. Even watermelon, they'll often not find to be sweet, and
Right.
so their tongues uh, have become immune to sweet.
Yeah, numb for sure.
Right,
Sure.
that's the word I was looking for.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think adults think they're not going to do it. But I've had exactly the same experience as the kids love the oatmeal. They love everything we make. I mean, sometimes there's a child who doesn't like one dish, and that's fine. That's true probably for Meryl Fury. It's true for Dilip Barman too. There's things that are healthy that I don't particularly like. Kohlrabi is one example. I don't like kohlrabi. My daughter doesn't like asparagus, right? My theory about why that is I think that Mother Nature has programmed us because what if down the road we never realize this, but kale, which everybody thinks is nutritious, we eat kale, we like kale a lot,
Mhm.
is what if it turns out there's something that we discover 50 years from now that it has this long-term effect that's bad for you. So I think Mother Nature sets it up so that some of us will survive even a
Oh,
calamity if
there you
kale,
go.
kale turns to be a poison. That's my theory. I think
Right?
it's a
That's a
pretty
good
good theory.
theory.
I think so too. But kids can
Right?
surprise their parents, and when they're exposed, and you know what we do is we share the recipes that if families want to try some of these things at home, they can.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing that's really powerful for children is to have the experience of cooking, right? And it makes the risk of trying something new somehow a little bit less risky. I cooked it. I
They're
chopped it
invested
up.
in
I
it.
did whatever. So tell us on that note a little bit about So Many Kids in the Kitchen.
I have to first talk about so many cooks in the kitchen.
Okay, well, if you must, go ahead.
Well, the beginning of the pandemic, there was discussion among. I assume your viewers probably know about the Physicians Committee Food for Life program because you're a fabulous Food for Life instructor.
Well,
Or
you can tell them a little bit. This might be the first time they're listening, so go ahead and talk.
Food for Life is a nutrition education program of the Physicians Committee. So PCRM is a group that Dr. Neil Barnard began. I don't know, 20 plus years ago. It's maybe 25. I don't remember, a long time ago. And it's a fabulous organization. I'm just so humbled that I could have a small part in it. So we're trained. All of us are vegan, whole food, plant based, and we are trained to teach a variety of classes. There's a class about weight management. There's a class for high performance athletes that I've taught recently. There's a class for people who are wanting to stay away from diabetes or who have diabetes and maybe want to control it or possibly even reverse it through healthy, whole food, plant based eating. And so we're trained to deliver these courses, all evidence based ones. And so there's what, 300 plus of us around the world, I believe.
Mhm,
I'm just so honored that I'm one of them. And of course, you are as well. So, uh, when the pandemic hit, I was actually in the middle of a class. It was the weight management class. So there was a discussion of what should we do, and I started teaching that class online. I think I was one of the very first instructors to teach an online class.
mm,
And then there was discussion, maybe we could do something like this where we share online, and we did. We created a program called So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. For any given show, we might have 6 or 8 cooks cooking, something like that, sometimes more, sometimes less, and we go kitchen to kitchen. So I'll start, and for example, our next one is about mushrooms, and
mm,
I'm trying to think what I'm going to make. We have Brenda Davis, who's my favorite nutritionist. She always writes an appendix. We have a free document, which has all our recipes, and we try to write something about the nutrition of the food. And she writes a lot about the nutrition of the foods we're talking about. And then we go live and we go kitchen to kitchen. I'll cook, talk about what I'm making, share the recipe, and then I pass it on to Carolyn Strickland in Alabama, or Cody
mhm,
Stubbe in Nebraska,
mhm,
or
mhm,
any number of other people. So and then we come back and do a Q&A. So that's So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. So a few of us, Cody Stubbe was is one of them, as well as Ella Rodriguez. We have children. And we're Food for Life instructors. So we said, why don't we start a show called So Many Kids in the Kitchen? So what's So Many Kids is in the kitchen, which was your question, is the kids in the kitchen at that time, at the beginning of the pandemic, they ranged in age from 4, I think, 4 to like 10 or 11, something like that. Uh, and now, Anu is the oldest. She's almost 16, and Nora is the youngest. I think she's 7. Um, So we go kitchen to kitchen, and the kids cook, and it's their recipes, and we try to publish their recipes early because I know there's a few kids around the world who cook with them because
Mm,
their recipes are simpler, and so it's fun, and they can be very simple. Like Nora's recipes sometimes are fairly simple, and then the older kids can be a little bit more complicated. So that's what so many kids in the kitchen is.
okay. And with that, I mean, these are children who are very used to eating lots of whole foods, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and all that. Does it seem that the cooking, what does that impart for the kids? Because they already know about fruits and vegetables. Do they gain any other insights or knowledge from doing cooking?
They love doing it and they feel great as presenters. In fact, one of them, Cody's oldest daughter, she actually came on a vegan cruise that we help with and presented. So it gives the kids a sense of accomplishment, ability to share. Because as you know, and what I tell my kids, getting back to math for a second, I teach younger kids tutoring, but my earliest grade is second. And when I started teaching second grade math, I actually learned a few things about math that I didn't know otherwise. Some really cool ways of subtracting. um, so like there's one way I like to tell my kids, pretend you're holding a rope and you're holding it tightly on the number line, and you want to do a hard question like uh, um, 12, or let's say 92 minus 17. That's kind of hard. So what I do is I have the kids enact it. So one person is at 17, one is at 92, and the person at 17 yells, "Hey, not at a convenient number, but you're holding the string tightly, right? Will you drag me 3 this way? Will you walk 3 this way?" So the person at 92 says, "I can do that." They move forward to 95. The person at 17 goes to 20. I can do 95 minus 20. That's not bad because it's 95 minus 10 is 85, 85 minus 10 is 75. And so I learned things like that, ways to teach subtraction. And when you learn this, it gives you a deeper understanding of the basic concept. So I think
Mhm,
the kids get that by sharing this. It clarifies in their mind
mhm.
what ingredients work, how they work together, and it makes them their presentation skills are honed and allows them to be good communicators and to be exponents for plant-based eating because there's so many good reasons to be vegan, to be healthy vegan, whole food plant-based consumers. It's
Right,
the best thing for the environment. It's the best thing for the animals. It's the best thing for our own health.
right.
If you know
So
what you're
on
doing, it's economical.
right. On that note, I think a lot of times when we, as adults, right, when we're talking about whole food, plant based eating, we're talking about it from the health end. Usually, I'm making a big generalization here, but in my experience, what I see is somebody gets to be 55 or 65 or 75, somewhere in there, and they start having or have been having issues with their health. Heart disease, high blood pressure, cancers,
Diabetes.
diabetes, right? These things come up. And that is a huge motivator for people to change their diet. There are also other reasons for people to change their diet, right? So when you're talking about food and the impact it has on other facets of life, can you tell us a little bit about how food affects our not only our health but the health of other animals, the planet, your stance as a vegan? Let's go into that just a little bit.
Well, let's be clear. I am a Food for Life instructor, and our classes are evidence-based, but I became a vegan long ago, 25 years ago, something like that, for ethical reasons. I'm an ethical vegan. I'm glad that it's the best thing for your health, but I'd be vegan even if it weren't, right?
Mm,
And I also, pre becoming a Food for Life instructor and post, give talks purely based on the ethics of eating.
mhm,
So, what animal wants to be killed to be eaten? No animal wants to be killed, right? And the animals that perhaps one could make an argument that maybe there's some benefit for eating roadkill, nobody eats, right? We're not vultures.
mhm,
There may be some benefit to cleaning up the environment to have these animals sitting around. Oh, I'm hungry. Let me eat the animal that's already passed away. We don't do that for a variety of reasons. So, ethically, I guess, my parents, maybe this relates to what you're asking me. My parents are immigrants from India. They came a long time ago. They came in 1960. There was nobody here from India. I mean, there was less than 13,000 people from India.
Mm,
So they were really pioneers, and they were cultural vegetarians for many generations. They didn't really question it. They didn't say why we should be vegetarian. And I find because of that, people who come from cultures that are vegetarian tend to be resistant to veganism because they aren't really necessarily. I'm doing broad brush descriptions, and of course, there's many, many, many counter examples. But in my parents' case, anyhow, they were vegetarian because their parents were, and that's what they were taught. They didn't really think about the ethics of it. And they had many unhealthy eating patterns, lots of dairy, fried foods, and so forth. So I lost my train of thought. You were asking about ethics. My parents introduced me to meat because there's so few people here from India, and they figured gentlemen in particular generally don't cook, and we're living in a country of meat eaters. So they used to never cook for me. My mom never cooked. My dad didn't really cook for me. My mom didn't really make meals for me, but we'd go out to White Castle, which is a Midwest. We were in the Midwest, a chain, or Burger King or McDonald's, but it's funny because it's kind of like in the Jewish tradition. In the Hindu tradition, it's the same thing. There's foods that are considered ritually unclean. So when I would eat dead animal foods, then I would have to wash my hands and my lips with soap because it was
mm,
considered unclean. And you would think I'd get the message, if this is unclean, do I want to introduce it to myself?
mm,
And
mm.
so I did eat some meat growing up. And then I became a vegetarian in my second year of college, where we didn't have a cafeteria. And we were shopping for groceries when my parents were getting me settled. And I saw the raw meat. And m- immediately I said to myself, I know you don't have to eat this because my mom and dad don't eat it. Most of my family
Mm,
doesn't eat
mm,
it. And I saw the dead animal and I said, I don't need to do this. So I became a vegetarian. So my initial move to vegetarianism was both cultural and ethical, and then later on I became vegan when I understood the arguments for veganism. So for me, it's definitely an ethical argument, and the ethics I think are obvious. They're clear because how could if you could eat lower on the food chain, then you don't have to remove to kill lives. Obviously, if your survival depends on it, you live in the northern Yukon territory and there's no greenery, but you have to kill rabbits. I mean, I wouldn't live there, but I
right,
can't. How can I tell somebody? How can I give a talk on veganism in the northern Yukon? I don't do this
right,
because some people, a very, very small percentage of people, this is a very small percentage of people we're talking about, don't have a choice, right?
right.
It's the same thing about dairy. Dairy is, for many reasons, a terrible food choice. And if you want, I can talk about the ethical issues. Dairy has worse ethical issues than meat, actually.
Mm,
And it's not a good nutrition source. It's not good for your bones. It's not a good source of calcium. But there are a few places in the world, sub-Saharan Africa and parts of village India, where they actually don't even have peanuts or any protein sources. Most of us get too much protein. There's a very small places
mm,
in the a very small percentage of people who do take animal milk, and the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. But that's a
right,
very small percentage of people. For the vast majority of people, the disadvantages just to human health way outweigh any possible advantages, and certainly to animals, it's all negative.
right, right.
So
You
I
know,
don't know if
when
that answers your question about the ethical aspect of eating, but we
well,
need to.
yeah, it does. It does. So 2 thoughts.
And one more thing related
Mm,
to that is the environment, which is a very important ethical issue. So I know in homeschool we studied about energy conversion, and my daughter made this beautiful graphic. Every time we convert energy from one form to another, there's inefficiencies. We lose something, and I'm missing the numbers right now, but it's most of the energy is lost, something like 90%. So if we were green, and I'm wearing a green shirt, so maybe it has chlorophyll in it. So if I go outside, although it's a rainy day, if I'm lucky, if I had chlorophyll, I could generate it. If I turned green, right, just put my hands out and collect the sun, then I wouldn't have to take time to make or sit down at the dinner table, make dinner or sit down at the dinner table. I could generate my own starches and proteins and fats and all that, but it's not the case. So I have to eat something. So by eating the plant is the most direct source from the sun. The sun rains down on the leaves. It generates, photosynthesis is triggered and starches are created. So we eat. But if we were to eat, for example, a rabbit, the rabbit has to eat a lot of plants. Why don't we just go to the source and be
mm,
far more efficient? Overnight, Meryl, if we did this, if we all did become vegan, uh, global warming would very quickly not become an issue. I mean,
Mhm.
we might be past the tipping point, but if we're not, then I think we could easily solve. It's the easiest way to solve global warming. Food equity, we'd have more than enough food to go around. So, from an environmental point of view, it makes so much sense to be vegan. And people who are motivated by the environment, if they read the literature, they look at some of the work, at least if they adopt a primarily plant-based diet, right? Maybe they're not ethical vegans, maybe they're not trying to optimize their health. At least if they're eating 80-90% plant-based, 95%, they're going to be doing something very good for the environment.
Right. And this is why we lean into teaching this to children, right? I mean, children actually are rarely convinced by the
Health.
thought, yeah, the thought that they may have a heart attack when they're 65. They don't care about that. That doesn't even register, right? That's like, but they do respond to talk about appropriate treatment of animals, treating animals with respect and care, right? And taking care of the planet. So when I start thinking about, that question I asked you before about why adults think children won't eat vegetables, if we flip that and say, what would cause a child to eat vegetables? The conversation around animals and planet
And
being,
environment, yeah.
yeah, good stewards, that is motivating for a child.
Yes, absolutely. Because we've not been good stewards of the environment, and thankfully the kids are not little kids, but like high school and college students are recognizing that they could do so much more.
Yeah.
Greta Thunberg is a great example.
Yeah. But even little kids do feel the stress of the changes in the environment, right? This storm that's going through right now, I'm sure if there was a thoughtful teacher or adult somewhere who wanted to make, connect the dots for a child about our eating patterns have certain effects on the planet and on other animals, and we could have a chance at making a difference if we changed our eating patterns, that could make a difference for the child that hears
It's such
that
a huge
message.
impact on the environment. It's ridiculous that people don't talk about it. Like, um, um, I've been to so many films and discussions on the environment, and there's this enumeration of things to do, like take shorter showers, live in a
Mhm,
smaller
mhm.
house,
Plant
all
trees,
these things, plant
mhm,
trees.
get an electric car.
We have an electric car, 2 electric, so we make this impact, but they're ignoring the thing that makes by far the biggest impact, and all those things are good, but why don't you attack the thing that makes the huge impact, the elephant in the room, and it's
Right,
generally not done. So
right,
it's surprising, and I think it has to do with, because this is good scientists who are often reporting this, and sometimes if you'll ask them, then they'll say, "Well, people just won't make that change.
right.
People will be willing to take a slightly shorter shower or this, that, the other thing, but to give up meat." This reminds me of a story. My dad had rheumatic fever when he was a child in India, and the doctor said that he's at some point going to have heart surgery. So he had my mom wasn't a vegan, but he understood the benefits of veganism, and he tried to be as close to vegan as he could within the parameters of what my mom would cook. And of course, he would come to my house sometimes as well. His diet wasn't as bad as my mom's, and I think um, uh, for a variety of reasons, he finally did have to have heart surgery when he was like in his 70s. I think he
Mm,
was 74 or 75 or something. And it was crazy because we had told the hospital, please, when he comes to and you start serving, please bring vegan meals. Well, they brought once he was out of recovery, they brought something like bacon, believe it or not, something like that.
mm,
And we told them, and they apologized. Oh, we made a mistake. We'll get the right food. So I talked to the cardiologist. I said, why are you serving? I think it was bacon. It could have been something else. Why are you serving food like this to heart patients?
right.
And I said, have you heard of Dr. Dean Ornish? Dean Ornish, as you very well know, is has come up with the Ornish plan, which doesn't stop heart disease; it reverses heart disease. And what 89% of the people who is it 89 or 92%? It's a very large percentage, roughly 90% people. And the plan involves low-fat, plant-based eating, moderate exercise, and either meditation or prayer,
Meditation. Right,
right?
right.
So those three things. And it's almost guaranteed to reverse your heart disease. And people don't share it. So I asked him, I said to the cardiologist, do you know about Dean Ornish? She said, of course I do. It's great stuff. It works. Why don't you tell your patients? Because they won't follow it. So can't you give them like even one sheet of paper and say, here's things you can do? And if they say, I don't want to do it, fine, but at least give them that information. And so it was crazy that they're not even sharing information they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And and
Even that, like, I'm not going to tell you because I know you're not going to listen or you're not going to follow it. That is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'm not going to tell you, so you won't know. You don't even get a chance to make that decision for yourself, you know. And there are
and
plenty,
on
plenty of
top of
people
that,
who would.
yeah, on top of that, you go to a hospital where often it's a very stressful place to be because you might be there because of an accident of a loved one, an ambulance came, somebody fell, and then it's uh, uh, the cafeteria is closed, so they have vending machines with very unhealthy foods. Or
Yep.
even in daytime, their cafeteria has bacon double cheeseburgers and things like that.
Yeah, or
It's like
there's
an
a fast food restaurant installed right there in the hospital.
It's like
That's
a
fine
assembly
too.
line. It's like, "We'll keep them sick, we'll keep them sick, we'll keep them sick. Hey, here's the high cost, heart procedure," and then bring them back, get them back on the, inappropriate treadmills to keep getting
Right,
them sick.
right. It's quite a business.
Yeah, and thank
Quite a
heavens
business.
PCRM has done something about it and has tried to. Dr. Barnard had a proposal that was accepted that by the American Medical Association. Didn't it say something like, "We recommend that hospitals have healthy food choices," something of that nature.
Mm, yeah. That I you know what? I hope it is. I have not read that proposal or that, but I hope it's got some more specifics because
What
healthy
does
food
healthy mean?
choices, lean,
Chickens?
skim milk, skinless, boneless chicken, low fat hot dogs. I don't know. Some of that is,
And
yeah,
you know,
that's not going
this
to
is
lend itself to a healthy heart.
this is one thing we can leverage with kids because kids sometimes are used to these comfort foods that their parents have introduced them to, hot dogs, hamburgers. There's fabulous vegan versions of all of these foods.
Mhm.
I'm not saying they're the healthiest choices, but they're far healthier than the animal choice. I don't have research behind it, maybe you do, but I bet you they're not addicting. So, like
Right.
in the Vegetarian Society, we used to have a big Fourth of July potluck, and somebody inevitably would bring, vegan hot dogs. So I don't particularly like them. I'll eat them once in a while. I think I have one vegan hot dog every 3 years or something
Mhm.
like that.
Right.
So it's good to have that, and these foods are available if you want. Meatloaf, there's vegan meatloaf. There's apparently there's some vegan fish. I've seen it in the market. I've never bought it. I don't
Mm,
seek those kinds of foods in general. I like there's a food I like. It's a sausage, and the guy who makes it tells me he's a vegan. He sold the business. It's field roast, and it's a traditional. It's a real sausage, but it has lentils.
mhm,
It has I think it may have I don't know about kale. I can't remember. It has good stuff. It's not a whole food because it's all kind of processed together, but it's a gazillion times better than dead pig sausage, right?
well, yeah, which is already known to, be a
Carcinogenic.
carcinogen.
Right. This isn't, and I know I've made it for one of my friends commented it tastes just like what he's used to. So I like that. I like it not because it looks like meat. I like it just because it browns nicely and it goes well
Mhm,
with pasta and a few things.
mhm,
I've stopped eating it very much. I buy it, but now I don't eat it as much because it's pretty high in fat. But I might even have one link in my refrigerator right now. So there are foods like this that I wouldn't center your diet on, but that help transition you towards a diet that's better for you, the planet, and certainly the animals.
right, definitely. So, we're almost out of time. One question, well, 2 things. One is, you mentioned the Vegan Society. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I have one more question after that.
So the Triangle of Vegetarian, we call it the Vegetarian Society. It used to be vegetarian, and then it became all our events are purely vegan. I like to use the word vegetarian because one definition of vegetarian is it comes from plants, and so I don't consider cow's milk or eggs really vegetarian, or honey or things like that. So I like the name Vegetarian Society. So I lead the Triangle Vegetarian Society. We used to be really active. We had a potluck and a restaurant review every single month. We used to have quite a few speakers, um, but our major event now, and that even before the pandemic started becoming less active because when we started in 1989, I think there weren't that many points of vegan information sources. This is before my time. I wasn't here. No, 1986, I think, was when we started. And it was started by Dr. Tom Reagan, who's one of the three fathers of the modern animal rights movement. He was a professor at NCSU. So he's one of the ones who started it. And then I took it over in the mid 90s, I guess. So our events became less popular because then it seems like you could eat vegan anywhere, and there were all these meetups and veg fest. We have a fabulous veg fest here. There's all sorts of great events, but our big event still is our Thanksgiving. We host the country's biggest vegan, I call it vegetarian Thanksgiving. And before the pandemic, we would sell out so quickly, Meryl, that we had to do a lottery.
Mm.
One year we sold out like 600 plus tickets in less than 2 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah. So
wow.
like a rock concert, right?
Right?
And so now we do a lottery where we are open because we heard reports from people who would cancel their tennis lessons or this, that, the other thing because they didn't want to miss out on getting tickets. So we didn't want people to do that. So now we're open for like 48 hours. It's usually the first weekend in November, and then once the period is over, a computer program runs and says top of the line was whoever made reservations at Sunday at 1:26 p.m. and that's one in line, and we fill from there based on your
Mm,
preferences.
mhm,
So that's what we're known for. We used to have people who would fly in. Two families from Chicago would come every year. We started getting one and then two families from Canada. We'd always have somebody from Florida. We'd have a family who drove from Philadelphia area to North Carolina. We had one or two families from California who would come. Since the pandemic, it's not, for a couple of reasons. We're not at 600 plus. We're still the biggest in the country, but the price had to go up quite a bit,
yeah.
and people aren't traveling as far for Thanksgiving, at least for our Thanksgiving. But we're still big. We're in the hundreds and hundreds of people, and we have made international TV. We were on NPR one year. We're always on all the local news stations locally. So come on down for Thanksgiving, triangleveg.society.org, and you can find information about our Thanksgiving. It's a great event, all vegan and just fabulous.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna make that trip this year. Well, yeah, I could. This year. Yeah,
You could.
I could. Oh,
That'd be
all right.
great.
Yeah, that would be. All right.
Nice.
All right. One more question. If there was one thing that you could tell a parent or an adult, um, that they could do right now that could make a difference for their children's health, what would you tell them?
Eat more
Even one small
beans.
thing.
And this is something I tell my kids because our gut is designed to eat high fiber foods, and generally we don't. Did you know? Of course, you know. We recommend in Physicians Committee 40 grams of fiber a day. And very few people get it. You and I almost certainly get it, but a lot of Americans don't. And so the problem, if you're not eating food like that, and you suddenly say, "I heard a talk," or Meryl or Dilip came in and talked to my kids about beans, and you start eating that way, you're going to generate a lot of gas. And if you're a little kid, you will, tease each other. So what I tell my kids is, during breaks, go ahead and eat a lot of beans. You're going to generate gas, but it should stop happening after a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, and then you're back to school and you can eat all the beans you want. So that's the advice I'd give: is start eating beans. They're cheap. So if you're poor, you can buy a can of beans for 89 cents, maybe even less. Maybe you get it for free from a food pantry. And if you buy organic like I do, then a can of organic beans would be like $1.29. What I usually do though is I get dried beans and I make it in my instant pot, and that's going to cost even less. So eat beans would be the thing I would suggest, and eat them over the course of a week or two, every day, every other day, until the gas goes away. And then just that, eating beans, lentils, foods like that, is going to give you great vitamins, B vitamins, fiber. Beans are one of the healthiest foods there are. So if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be
Mm.
eat beans, don't worry about the gas, and you'll overcome the gas. And there's tricks. I know we're short in time, but I could share if you're interested. There's lots of tricks in cooking: ginger, baking soda, all sorts of things. Cook them
Mhm.
to death to reduce the impact of gas.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Wonderful. One of the things I'll just add to that, there's a study that use I refer to frequently when almost every time I do a public presentation. There was a study that was done, released in 2018, in the journal Nutrients, and it was talking about the neurotransmitters available in foods, and that certain beans, just like you're talking about, spinach, tomatoes, oranges, zucchini, strawberries, all fresh fruits and vegetables.
Plant foods.
Yeah, all have the building blocks or the foundations for necessary neurotransmitters, and for our children, where they need to be able to focus, remember, tasks of discrimination, um, fine
Perform.
motor skills, all kinds of things. The plant foods provide the building blocks for these neurotransmitters that make it easier, facilitate the child learning in an educational setting, right?
Absolutely. Attention, keeping attention.
Yes, yes, yes. And if we are not giving our children those things, if we're instead leaning into the highly processed food, the typical standard American kids diet is pepperoni pizza, chicken nuggets, maybe white noodles with butter or something like that, maybe some mac and cheese. And then of course the cereals and the sweetened drinks. Those things do not provide the building blocks. And a lot of those building blocks have to do with the fiber that you're talking about, right? That we're feeding the microbiome of the gut. And the gut has that direct connection with the brain and
Absolutely.
facilitates the child's learning and growth.
Right.
So, on that happy note, Dilip, I want to thank you for being my guest today. This
Thank
has
you
been
so
such a
much.
pleasure. We get to talk frequently, but never this long, usually, and never in depth. So, I so appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate
Anything
you
you'd
the
like to say?
opportunity.
Yeah, anything you'd like to say as we sign off?
Well, let me add this. So, a lot of what we do, Meryl is fabulous, and I try to do lots of programs as well. A lot of times we are preaching to the choir. So, if you're part of the choir, welcome, and I hope we've given you some ammunition to help share with others. If keep fingers crossed, some of you aren't in the choir, you can see there's some movement. So, if you're eating a lot of animal foods, try to cut some of them back. Try to experiment, and feel free to start with transition foods. Go ahead and try those vegan burgers if you want some of the vegan cheeses and things like that. The vegan cheeses are great. So start taking steps and try to move towards a vegan diet. And then from there, try to start taking steps towards a whole food plant based diet.
Mhm.
And I think your body's going to thank you. You're going to have less likelihood of getting sick. The evidence, there's many studies that show that we have longevity, up to 9 years of extra life and good years of not having debilitating conditions. Wouldn't we all want to live to be whatever age and then suddenly die in our sleep, as opposed to have a drawn out death with heart problems, kidney problems, things like that? So I guess I would end with that: is welcome whether you are in the fold, but could improve your game a bit and have things you want to share with others. And if you aren't in the fold, then come on aboard. It's
All
fun.
right. Come on in. All right. Well, thanks again, Dilip. We will put all of your information in the show notes and make sure that your bio is in there and how people get a hold of you. If you have any socials, we'll also put those in the show notes. And we definitely want to put in information about the Math Institute of the Triangle because,
Okay.
oh my goodness, every child should be great at math and not carry some burden for the rest of
I,
their life about how they
I
failed
love
out.
teaching plant-based nutrition. I love teaching math also.
All right. Well, I will talk to you soon, I'm sure. Thanks so much. We're signing off, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.